A widower who tragically loses his wife in a car accident is now being tormented by their family. You got it, the mother-in-law. She's ripping him a new one. Guys, let me start at the beginning. This is a 5-part update, and this story is bananas. My wife died suddenly in an accident that critically injured our son. Suffice to say, along with being shattered, the whole matter has me rather preoccupied. Her family arrived rather quickly and took charge of a lot of stuff, especially the funeral. It was helpful because my focus needed to be on my son. I was pretty much a guest at my own wife's funeral because although I was there for a brief while, it was on a day when my son was scheduled for the rather serious procedure. And so my time was definitely divided. All the while, I could hear Suzanne, my wife, in my mind, telling me to take care of Zach, not worrying about the formalities. So I basically just gave my in-laws my checkbook. I'm not even complaining about that. What happened next is different. They wanted to take some of her things, and of course, I understood the value in their having a keepsake of their sister/daughter. I would have never said no, but they took everything. Keep in mind, I wasn't there. My younger son wasn't in the house at the time either. The next time that I was home, I realized that they basically cleaned the house out of everything they thought was hers, including photo books. Hours before this, my wife's older sister even went so far as to say she wanted to take PJ, my younger son, saying I needed time and that he would be better with them. I shot that down before she even finished the idea, though I tried not to let my anger show. In the immediate, my feelings was, quote, I'm not going to deal with this right now. I simply did not have the time or bandwidth to deal with it. Not long after, my wife's sister called asking about several pieces of jewelry, claiming them as heirlooms to the family. That prompted me to recall a safe deposit box that my wife kept. I never thought we needed it. When I went to close it out, I found the jewelry. They're not getting that. But also, among the papers, I found that she had a will. It was informal, but it was detailed, and I later learned that it is enforceable. Key to note, my brother-in-law, after learning that his wife took such things as our photo books, demanded that she return them. She refused. My lawyer has been communicating with me constantly since the accident. There were so many details, and I've already given him the will. When I told him that my sister-in-law refused to return the property, which rightfully belonged to our children, he told me he would make a written request for all the items to be returned to the executor, in order that they can be distributed in accordance to her wishes, and asked me to make a list. This was over a month ago. Today, I got a reply from some attorney, stating effectively that I've given them permission and so all items questioned were gifts. Are you freaking kidding? This reply came through my lawyer, wherein he said, now we play hardball. He said he'll seek an order, though I'm not sure if it requires a trial. I meet him next week. I would be passive in the shadow of all this stuff if it meant protecting my boys from a family upset. But a line has been crossed. I want my son to have a good relationship with their mother's family. That's paramount, and I would do whatever it took to ensure that. Now, we're about to get into a legal dispute, and things are likely to go badly. My last communication was with my mother-in-law, where she lost her mind on me. We'd always been close, so this is all strange to me. She was making demands that were unreasonable. The call ended abruptly when I explained that the boys were my children, that I would decide what's in their best interest, and suggest that she not test me. I'm done playing. I just don't need to deal with this crap. I buried the love of my life. I'm dealing with the after effects of the accident. I'm doing everything I can to bring my son back to good. And now I have to deal with this. Thing is, people manage grief differently. I get that. I respect that. These are not bad people. They are simply behaving badly, but I can't allow it. I haven't told the boys about any of this yet. I hope I won't have to. More than once, one of them asked where this is or where that is, and I told them that their aunts are borrowing them. Who does this? Seriously. Anyways, I have nobody to yell at, and I really don't want to kick the dog, since I love my dog. So I'm just venting here. Thanks again for a place to do that. Update number 1. After my wife died suddenly, I vented here about how her family came through and took her stuff. The reaction from here was more than expected, and I was appreciative of it. A lot of folks here were mad on my behalf. Many asked that I update, so here we go. I had a long and reasonably deep discussion with Suzanne's mother and sisters earlier today. They speak to my boys, my sons Zach and PJ, on occasion and actively seek the connection. I haven't spoken to them in a while and have not proceeded with any additional action since the initial request through my attorney that they returned her property, now my children's property. It was my wife's older sister's birthday a couple days ago, and for all that's happened, I still made sure to send her lilies. Suzanne sent her lilies every year. I guess I was looking to remain human, though, all this mess, and maybe rubbing their nose a little bit at the same time. Either way, this was a catalyst for her to call today. We spoke for a minute or two before she asked if I would speak to them all, together on Zoom. They were actually standing by as we spoke, so I closed the door of my study and joined them online. As they popped up on my screen, I didn't say anything. I did not show any emotion at all. This was their invitation, so I was just listening. I had no idea what to expect. Her mother started the conversation by hitting us with a tough subject, straight head on, saying, quote, "We have the request from your lawyer and we withdraw our answer. We want to comply with everything." Then her older sister added, "And we want to know how we can fix what we've broken." For the hell I've been living over this, the relief of their words was enough. I told them nothing needs to be broken. They asked me if I would listen, and of course I said I would. And for a while I did. I did not say a word. They were orderly, if not rehearsed, in their monologue, taking turns in affirming to each other. Her mother explained that they were shattered after losing Suzanne, and that they seemed to come together as a pack. Quote, "We've had some time since those first days, and we've talked it through, and all of us realized that we weren't thinking," her younger sister said. Part of the grief was indeed anger, they explained. They weren't angry with me, just angry in general. When they were at the house and picking a couple of items to keep, they just kept taking things. Her older sister explained that they were upset that, as Suzanne's husband, I controlled everything and everything defaulted legally to me. She said it should not have upset them, acknowledging that's just how it is. But they felt, quote, secondary. This was the only time I spoke, saying, "I never made you feel secondary. We just wanted her back," one of them said. "Without that, we wanted everything we could have had for her." They knew they were wrong, but being wrong only made it worse. They explained it like digging a hole, and not being able to get out of it, so, quote, "We doubled down," one of them said. Her mother became emotional when she said this. I read the inscription on the box and realized that it wasn't Suzanne's, but that she had made it for you. She then said she did not mean to take it. The inscription speaks of carved inside little small decorative box that Suzanne gave me years ago. It reads, "Still and after all." She always said that to me, especially after I would drive her crazy. Whenever I got Suzanne mad, I'd ask if she loved me, and she always said, "Still and after all." Anyone would know that that box means a great deal to me. The upshot is that my brother-in-law will be returning everything next weekend. Her mother emphasized everything. He'll be driving it down, and my sister-in-law asked if it might be possible for him to stay over, given that it's such a long drive. I told her that Anthony should always consider this his home, and they should too. When they finished, it was my turn. I didn't say much. I didn't want to say a lot. I only told them how much their decision meant to me and the boys. I explained that I understood everything that they said and, quote, "We were all out of our minds," I assured them. I'm relieved and yet cautious. I need some time to pass, but I'm hopeful that the relationship will heal going forward. Update number 2. Thanks to everyone for the overwhelming support throughout the issue. All's resolved now, and so I wanted to come back and give the final update. My brother-in-law, Anthony, arrived last night. The boys were already in bed by then. I like Anthony. I always have. He's a good man. He was awkward initially, as if he had some reason to feel guilty. He didn't. I went to work right away at making him feel comfortable, and the two of us had a beer outside on the patio. It was good to talk to him, and we spent some time reminiscing over some funny memories. It wasn't long before we were relaxed. I convinced him to just stay a bit longer today, so that we could take the boys fishing. They love their Uncle Tony, and he loves them. I knew it would make them happy, and it did. We had a blast. Sitting with him on the patio last night, I could tell he was exhausted from the drive, and so I told him the guest room was all set for him. But I asked him for his keys because I wanted to bring everything in while the boys were sleeping. He insisted on helping, and so we emptied his little van. True to their word, everything was there. There was a couple of very obvious items, such as the bell my boys love so much. It's not all that impressive, but the sentimental value is very real. Also, their mother's little flower painting was another item of great sentimental value, among other things now returned. The space where her painting hung was starkly cold, but now it's warm again. After getting Zach ready for the day, both boys migrated to their usual place at the counter in the kitchen. Uncle Tony came out, and as soon as he heard them and their reunion, it was so wonderful. This is why it was so important to keep her family close. I know they love the boys, and I know the boys love them. PJ noticed the bell almost immediately. He would, quote, hop excitedly as he went over to ring it. He put 2 and 2 together and thanked Anthony for bringing it back, then asked, quote, why did they borrow it anyways? That had been my excuse. I told them that if their aunt borrowed a few things, no big deal. Anthony just smiled and said, I really don't know. It was a perfect answer because the subject was dropped right away. The boys don't need to know, and right now, they don't care. After the bell, Zach's first instinct was to turn the hall and see the painting was back. When it was, he and PJ went over to study it as if it were hanging in a museum. Although they're only boys, clearly things matter to them. I glanced over at Anthony and saw a smile on his face that can only be described as content. Those who may recall, it was Anthony who demanded his wife, my sister-in-law, to return everything. I changed the focus by rallying up the boys with the news that we're going to the pier. They were immediately diverted, and that was my plan. They may notice other items are back where they belong, but I don't know how they'll think too much into it. There could be no better solution than that. I'll have all of my wife's photo books copied for her family, and the next step is to visit with them, to share Suzanne's will, and to give them the things she wanted each of them to have. I'll go into the visit renewed, having put this moment behind us. In the end, they did the right thing. Forgiveness, therefore, is the correct response. Hey guys, Mr. Reddito here. So, it seems like it's all hunky-dory and everything ended proper. Well, let me just tell you, that's not the case. There's some more updates for this, and the title of this next one is, I'm suing my late wife's family at last. Long time coming. If you're enjoying this series, please subscribe just in case there's any more future updates, and let's go ahead and hop into this wild update. I've vented about this here, and I've tried everything I know not to come to this place. But here we are. Since losing my wife, her family has acted like entitled vultures, rather than supporting our children. They come through and stole everything after the funeral while I was in the hospital with my son, who was also in the accident. I tried to settle the matter with them personally, but they ignored me, thinking I just let it go. I've been 20 years a slave to these people, playing the part that they expect me to play, trying to keep them happy in the name of family. We're all done with that now. So, most of it was resolved when my lawyer sent a demand letter. The action caused them to reach out to me with crocodile tears and apologize, and they returned most of the stuff. But not all. What did not come back was trivial for what I knew at the time, and I let it go. At the time, I accepted them, tried to understand them, and was willing to let bygones be bygones for the sake of my children. Things, though, have not gotten better. They came at me for Suzanne's insurance. I think that was the beginning for the end for me. She had a will for them, specifically for them. She knew they would try this and tried to mediate it. She was specific to what she wanted to leave them, and I follow it to the letter. Our sons were the only beneficiaries of her insurance policy, and I put that policy into a trust for each of them. Again, to the letter, there's nothing else. I finally reached critical mass with these people and just shut them down. I cut them off. I won't deal with them any longer, and I told them that. In the end, I would support my son's relationship with them, but it'll be lacking the trust that a family should have by default. My sons have picked up a lot on this, and I've been frank with them, and they've become indifferent. They know the score, and they have not spoken to them much since my elder boy's birthday. That's when they took the event to go after him, which was unacceptable. It kills me, because I've known these people for most of my life, and part of me still wants to love them. They're not evil, they're just so very wrong. They have a mindset that never made sense to me. It's a lot, and what I've worked around all my life with Suzanne, and she did too. She was nothing like them. After Suzanne, they've done everything wrong to the point where it's irreversible. We don't speak, but this did not keep them from leaving a message on my phone this past week. I will not respond to it. In it, they said that we needed to discuss Suzanne's affairs. The translation is, we want money. No. My last conversation was about my father-in-law's watch. It took me some time to realize that they had taken it and I wanted it back. I asked for it back, but I also asked them if they planned to gift it to my son themselves, because if so, that would be fine. They've said nothing. I did not know about the watch at first, and I don't think to look for it in items that were taken and returned. But when I remembered it, I was so upset to find it missing. Before her beloved father died, he was such a good man. He gave Suzanne his watch to give our son, Zach, on his graduation day. It was a deathbed wish and everyone knew it. The watch, a Rolex, was his prized possession. He bought it in Japan when he was in service and he was determined that it goes to Zach. Not only as the first grandson, but for how deeply he loved him. Suzanne had the watch for a few years before she passed. It isn't noted in any will or anything. Elsewhere, the law might find it. It was a verbal understanding. She had possession until they took it. And so there's a 9/10 thing that's going on here. Illegal, he said, she said. My sister-in-law admitted that they had it, and I was keen enough to recover it. Whether admissible or not, I have it. She did not say which of them was in possession, but that they do have it. When I asked her for it to be returned, even offering to pay them for it, I get, quote, "Well, you can talk about that," as if suggesting that it was a chip in their game. The trouble is that I'm not playing anymore. My lawyer, he's a pit bull, truly a nasty man, excellent lawyer. Ever since his interaction with their counsel over the first wave of nonsense and the demand letter, he was personally pissed. This lawyer of mine isn't a friend per se, but we deal with each other almost every day. Before all this happened, I never realized how thick the legal quagmire is following such an event. So many details. I called him Friday and left a message with his assistant. He called me today, Saturday, and offered to meet for lunch today. He needs my signature on another item, but we would also be speaking to this little petty matter. He reminded me how I resisted legal action in the past, but that maybe it was time. The upshot is that I've gotten the green light, a lawsuit, and he'll get it rolling on Monday. This action will not only cement my separation from them, but will also express my determination to no longer be fooled with. We agreed that it's primarily a message suit. My lawyer explained that it will go on one or two ways. First, they will settle by complying, which they partially did last time, and that they would be a win. The second is they fight me. If they fight me, I'll lose, or best case, gain a pittance of monetary judgment. Quote, "How much do you want the watch?" he asked, because if it goes that way, he said, quote, "The watch is gone." But he was clear to say that we would go forward anyways, adding, quote, "I'll destroy them in a public forum." Given what they've put me through and my sons through, he assured me that, quote, "There's something to be said for that." He told me that he's going to send them a demand letter on Monday. Next day delivery, all three, the mother and two sisters, and gave them a minute to reply. "On Wednesday, I'll have them served," he said. "We're not messing around." I don't know if he was being metaphoric, but he said, "I will breathe on their freaking necks like a nightmare." "You'll pay the process server the fees, but you won't get a bill from me," he told me. "This is not complicated and it's the right thing to do." Last year, this would not have been imaginable. To me, everything, every action I made as a man was intended in the preservation of family. "You do for the family" is my motto. Typing that just now actually makes me mad. You have no idea what I've done for these people and for how long. I think this is the first month that I won't be paying the tax and utilities on my mother-in-law's house. I've paid them since Suzanne's father died. Years. It's part of cutting them off. There are so many examples, and yet for every one of them, I still don't feel like a sucker. I know I did the right thing. The trouble is that, in return, they did the wrong thing, so now I walk away. However this goes from here, it's out of my control, and maybe that's the way it ought to be. It's a mess of their own making. This isn't a sophisticated case, it's just a small claim. But they can't ignore it, and the rules are very different. I've watched this lawyer on the offense, and it's a scary thing to see. Even when he's curtailed by objections and the trappings of the court, these proceedings will lack some of the formality, and he's salivating. So, I'll turn him loose like a pack of dogs. I'm ready for it. I'll either get the watch back or I'll make an unmovable point. If I win, my father-in-law's wishes, Suzanne's wishes, will be respected, and my son will have what is his. If I lose, they'll be publicly shamed for taking that away from him. Either way, I've come a long way this year. I'm no longer the man I was before. I'm not laying down to be rolled over anymore. One of these things needs to happen. Final update. My lawyer told me that from the start, I wouldn't win. He called this suit a message, and that he would rip their lives apart publicly, not only for the watch, but for everything they put me and my boys through. I've reached a point where that was okay. So they were served and they provided their answers and a date was set, which is upcoming. I've had 2 missed calls from my lawyers today, but that's not unusual. I'll just call him back in the morning. We have other business. I don't suspect his call was about the watch. I really haven't thought about it. I read an email from him tonight which proved otherwise. He wrote to tell me that they called him today and offered to settle by returning the watch. It was a small claim, so they had not lawyered up, and he spoke to my mother-in-law directly. He said she was emotionless. He told me that the watch would be sent to his office, and he would let me know the moment it arrived. He insisted that it be insured and sent priority mail, and she agreed. So, it's over. And it's not the watch, it's more than that. These are difficult people. My life as Suzanne's husband was a lot about appeasing them and keeping the peace. I never stood up to them. I only went with the flow in the better interest of family and focused on good times. Whenever someone had to give an inch, it would be me, and they got used to that. But then they stole from my children, and I became someone else. I think they're figuring out that now, and I didn't even blink. I don't know what any of this means going forward. I'll always hope for a better relationship, if only for the boys, and I've wanted that all along, and I offered it. Zach doesn't know anything about this, and I'm not sure he needs to know. He's making up time and credits because of the accident, but he's on track and his graduation will come. It'll be a spectacular victory. I want her family there for his sake, and we'll let that play out for now. Tonight, I'll focus on the idea that his grandfather's wish will be fulfilled. I know that his mother would be very pleased. That was an absolute up and down roller coaster. At first, I thought OP was finally just going to forgive the family and bygones be bygones, but no. They had to go after the insurance money. That's absurd and extremely greedy. Guys, let me know your exact thoughts on this story, or if you've ever known someone in a similar situation, drop it down below and let's talk about it. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. That story was absolutely bonkers. If you want to see more stories, that's just one story for the whole video, but has multiple updates. They're going to be a little longer, but some of you might enjoy that. So let me know your thoughts about that in the comments below. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you in the next one.